acceptances. Thomas trying to work through. Nice take from Marchek. Look at the left foot. Brody Marchek.
A long ball to Geary, who's been magnificent. Here's Butler. Gets away from Gardner. Butler this time doesn't miss. Straight through the middle.
Good tackle though. Put the pressure on the Clay. Cameron within range. Gets it.
Hello, I'm Damian Barrett and welcome to Access All Areas, brought to you by Sportsbet. Week one of the finals is in the books and it was a truly special start to the 2020 series. As I say hello and welcome to you, Matthew Lloyd, it was Collingwood which provided the biggest upset.
They did, Damo. It was a famous win for Collingwood there on Saturday night. Just the energy in that stadium was electric. Obviously, the West Coast Eagles are always hard to beat. They hadn't lost at Optus Stadium this year. And the way the Collingwood Footy Club played, they had to do something different. I thought they played a little bit too safe for most of the year. They hadn't kicked 12 goals since round 3 in a game. That was way back when they played St Kilda at the MCG, and they did it against West Coast in a final where, it's pretty intimidating. You've got to put scoreboard pressure on, and just the way they linked up with run and handball. They've been, as I said, safe in other weeks, kicking no more than 10 goals in a game, and Damo, to produce this on the big stage in a knockout final, it was an epic final for them.
Lotto, it actually stretched back to team selection, didn't it? They were bold in sticking with Jaden Stevenson. His form had been down. There were question marks about him. They picked him. Now, he didn't have his best game, but he contributed. They were very bold in picking Darcy Cameron to go with Brodie Grundy against Nick Naitanui. Nick Naitanui was still one of the very best players on the ground, but they combined to play well against him. And then, to your point, the match style and the team style they took into the game, it was different to what we'd seen for much of the year. And it flew in the face of what we thought was going to be the case in many people's eyes, and you were very worried about the forward line structure, weren't you?
Yeah, really impressed with it. I've probably questioned Cox and Myercheck and who's the A-grade forward in this team that can get them through, and Cox did it early. On the road, as I talk about, you must silence the crowd. You need to give yourself some confidence. And there was 4 goals straight to 1 goal 2 at quarter time off the back of Mason Cox, and he's been remembered for one game. Everyone said, has he done anything aside from that preliminary final v Richmond? Well, now they'll talk about the start Cox made against West Coast on the road. And this guy, Brodie Myercheck, what a bargain basement pickup he's been. Port Melbourne, playing VFL footy as a centre-half back, and now he's the number 1 forward for Collingwood. And he's been a good player for a long time. So it's the first time they've kicked 6 goals between them in about a year of football. So it was a great time to step up from those two.
The freedom with which they took into that game, Lordo, can they transfer that to their next game against the Cats?
They just have to. I think that's the way they have to play. I know it's going to get back to probably slippery conditions at the Gabba maybe on a Saturday night, but I think if Collingwood to go far, you've got to take Geelong on, try and get their lack of pace that Geelong often have, try and stretch them with that link up. Adam Treloar and those players sometimes can go lateral and sideways. I love the way they use the corridor, and it certainly helped Cox and Myercheck because they were quicker entries and deeper entries on Saturday night.
It was a disappointing and very unfulfilling and ultimately unsuccessful 2020 for West Coast. And Lotto, I go back a few months now, maybe 3 months, when they was hubbing in southeast Queensland. They presented to the public a very disappointed team. They were a moaning team, and I feel they never shook that off. They then went public with some positivity, but to me it was a bit fake. And ultimately, I feel they never got their heads around the disruptions of this season to a point where they were bundled out in the first week of finals unexpectedly. Yeah,
and you look at the way some other teams, Port Adelaide, that initial period where Port Adelaide were on the road, and they were just so positive, and even thought the way Collingwood attacked this period in Perth, just the positivity that came out of them was exceptional. West Coast have so much talent on that list, but I think maybe they have to look at the way they play too. Pretty slow in the build-up, the way they play. And when you've got such a star-studded forward line, I think they could take on the game a little bit more as well moving forward next year.
There was a sad moment at the end of the St Kilda big win against the Bulldogs in their elimination final, Lotto. I refer to the injury here sustained by Paddy Ryder in the closing 100 seconds of the game. He's ripped that hamstring. He's out for the remainder of the year. To that point, I think he was universally judged as best of field in that elimination final win. He's not going to be part of what lies ahead for the Saints, and it's a shame. Jake Carlisle today, this morning, this Monday, has also said officially he will be not a part of the next game for personal and family reasons, and they've also got an issue with Ben Long, which we'll have a look at in a moment. But the win has come at a cost, hasn't it?
Oh, massive cost. That's their biggest weapon. Ryder and Marshall double teaming other ruckmen, and would have been brilliant for him to come up against Toby Nankervis and try and stretch Toby on Friday night. And this is Ben Long. I love his hardness, and he's a very, very good player for St Kilda, but he's crossed the line now for the second time. He got 3 weeks earlier in the year. Now he cops another one. He's hurting his team. It's play hard, but that should have been a hard tackle there, not bumping. And he's fortunate. I'm glad he got a week, because he could have broken McRae's jaw and he'd be looking at another 3 weeks out. So he's got to look at the technique that he plays with. But I think they go in as massive underdogs now against Richmond with no Paddy Ryder playing, because Marshall would try and stretch the Richmond defence. Now we'll have to pretty much ruck the whole night.
It was one of the great recruiting coups this time last year when they brought those players in on the left of screen there, and obviously Paddy Ryder was one of those. That they've all stood up, Lordo, in their own way, and they effectively all contributed in an elimination final win. They've given up a little bit to get those players in. Pick 6 being the obvious point going out of the club in order for that to happen, but it just goes to show if you can get it right in trade period, you do give yourself a chance in the very next year.
I think they surprised themselves. I think they spoke to all these different players, and then suddenly they thought, oh, they all want to come to us, so now we have to try and somehow make it work. And quite ironically, the player that they gave up most for in Bradley Hill, he's probably been the most disappointing of them. But the rest of them, the bargain basement, Butler, what he's done for them, Paddy Ryder, what he's done for them. Dougal Howard, just want to talk about Dougal Howard. I thought he and Caulfield on the weekend, Damo, were exceptional. Some of these marks from Howard, if he's playing for Port Adelaide, I think they would be more likely to win the Premiership. I still don't have full faith that Trent McKenzie can be a Premiership fullback. I think Tom Hawkins, he got away with it, but Hawkins kicked 5 points and fell short on another one where it went out on the full. So he is a huge loss. I didn't know how good he would be. Caulfield, they've proven what a great draft it was. Caulfield and Hunter Clark, one pick after each other, was exceptional maybe 3 years back. But the Dougal Howard loss to Port Adelaide is huge, just with the footy he's playing. He reminds me a little bit of Harris Andrews with just how dominant he is in the air for St Kilda.
And another player, a key player brought into the Saints in the previous trade period, Lordo, was Dan Hannebery. And he's had his problems, and they've been well documented. But gee, he stood up. He was rushed back into that round 18 game, having missed 10 rounds of football. Just the precision with which he brings the ball into the forward 50. You could just tell, Lordo, couldn't you, that was a man in that game who had the finals experience compared with a lot of other players on that ground.
Yeah, it's a good point you make there on finals experience, and just the class that he's got. And if you want to lead to a player at St Kilda, inside forward 50, it's probably Daniel Hannebery with the way he played. And I'm like you, I was shocked when they brought him in for that round 18 game. I didn't think they would. I thought they'd think he hasn't played enough footy, but he's definitely earned his spot with the way he played on the weekend. Speed
was a key component to what they did on the weekend. They'll need to do it against the Tigers as well to bring out the best. But it was a key element to what they did. And again, one of these recruits, Dan Butler, he had a nearly night, but he also did some very, very good things. This passage of play here, he was on the end of, hit the ball hard and then ran into the goal, as he so often does. Yeah, it's what can trouble Richmond. It's speed, and it's the way they beat Richmond earlier in the year. I think it was round 4. The speed was just too much at Marvel Stadium for Richmond. And just want to full credit to Brett Ratton. I don't know how they played under Alan Richardson. It was just a game plan that was, it was relied a lot around Seb Ross and Jack Stephen, and it was pretty, slow ball movement, going wide and directionless. Whereas now under Brett Ratton, they take the game on, and I think it's what's got them to this position to where they are right now. For the second year in a row, the Bulldogs are out in an elimination final. But they stood up in this one, though, it must be said. They didn't the previous year against GWS. But ultimately, Lordo, the problem areas for them came out to bear in this game against the Saints. That being the ruck issue with Tim English, who was dominated by Paddy Ryder, and also the problems in the forward line. Yeah, they've dragged Tim English forward and in the home and away game, and then in this final, and he just does not know how to defend Tim English. So they've exposed him.
they've had golden opportunities the last 2 years with a big midfield and probably one of the best midfields in the game, but they've got an inexperienced ruckman. So probably 2 lost years where if they had a more experienced ruckman to support Tim English, they might have gone a little bit deeper. And I thought, Damo, at the start of the year was a good trade period for bringing in Josh Bruce and Alex Keith, but Josh Bruce has just been a massive failure for the Western Bulldogs. He kicked 6 goals in one game and 8 goals in the rest of the games, which is 16 other games. So he really failed again on the weekend where Dougal Howard was just too good for him. And Alex Keith, he couldn't handle young Max King on the weekend. So I think they struggle in defence for height, attack for height, ruck for height. And over the years, they've tried Barry Hall, Josh Shackey, Tom Boyd, Alex Keith, Josh Bruce. They keep trying year after year. Aaron Norton, to me, is a centre-half back, not a centre-half forward. So their height issues continue and lets them down in big finals.
Yep. 2 teams have obviously dropped out after week 1 of the finals. 6 remain. Let's see what that's done to the Premiership market with Nathan Brown of Sportsbet.
Yeah, thanks, Damo. There's been some big moves, as you'd expect, in the Premiership market. The Tigers have lost and Brisbane are now the outright favourite. Port Adelaide, they're going to be very, very hard to beat. Let's talk about Richmond for a minute. We wound them out to $5.50 after the game. Since then, the punters have still backed Richmond into $4.50. So the punters out there seeing the value still in Richmond. On the outside of that, Collingwood at 12 and St Kilda at 26. Brownlow medal time and Lachie Neale. It's going to be super hard to beat Lachie Neale. We've got him leading this Brownlow, winning this Brownlow by about 5 votes at the moment. So Lachie, I think I might have a sneaky Lachie Neale into Richmond to win the Premiership. I still like the Tigers. Now you can vote on the most Brownlow votes at your team. Here's the Cats. I think Sam Menegola is a very good bet. I think he's going to be a good thing for top 10 at Brownlow night. But Sam Menegola and at West Coast, there's some value here because I think Tim Kelly had some big games. So if you multi those two together, I'm going to have Menegola into Tim Kelly. That is the Brownlow medal. Good luck if you're punting and gamble responsibly.
Well, the new favourites beat the old favourites, Lordo, in the qualifying final, that being the Brisbane Lions beating the Richmond Tigers. And they did so with a blitz, didn't they? They went in with a really steely-minded determination to hit hard and just continue to do that throughout the entire game.
Yeah, the boys became men on Friday night. They were just awesome, the Brisbane Lions. And it's just this pressure. This is one of the best packages of pressure that you're ever likely to see. And it came from all types. Small forwards, young players like Coleman on the weekend, laid some big tackles like this one on Shai Bolton, and they were not going to be intimidated. They thought to themselves, we've been beaten up by you for too long, and tonight's our night. And they weathered the storm early, and Richmond lost their way through that second and third period. They became undisciplined because I don't think they liked the fact that these young Lions are saying, we'll take your best shot and we'll give you even more than that. And I love the night. I doubted whether the forward line of Brisbane could kick a winning score, but those doubts are gone. I think it was such a great team performance from Brisbane. They don't lack for anything at all. And to have a prelim now at the Gabba and potentially a grand final, they are the team to beat.
They didn't like it, the Tigers. It's a good point. They were taken right out of their comfort zone. Their comfort zone resides, Lordo, doesn't it, in the intercept marks they're able to take, particularly in the back part of the ground. And just lining up what happened in that particular game with what had been happening for the past 2 seasons of football, Lordo, particularly against the Lions, you can see there that the Lions went in with that as a focus to really pull apart those intercept marks from the Tigers.
Yeah, even Charlie Cameron spoke, Damo, about how the last time he played on Grimes, he played out of the goal square too often. And what they did really well was they moved around. Hipwood got up higher up the ground, took Bolter up. Charlie Cameron took Grimes further up the field, and you just saw the nervousness in Richmond. We haven't seen Aaron handballs like this in a long, long time, and it's usually them suffocating other teams. Well, Brisbane did it to them, and you just see the mistakes they started to make, and then the speed as the game wore on. If you can get speed on the ball against Richmond, that's your chance. And guys like Vlosten, Grimes and Bolter, they didn't have time to get back an intercept mark. The ball was brought to ground like this by Stephen Martin, and then Zach Bailey and Charlie Cameron kicked goals like this. So it was a sensational performance from Brisbane. I couldn't be more impressed.
Well, the other qualifying final, Geelong and Port Adelaide. You go back to the 2018 draft and you've got Dersma, Rosie and Butters coming into it. You go to round 1 of 2019 and those 3 players were prepared to really serve it up to the Melbourne Footy Club, Max Gawn in particular. You go to this qualifying final of 2020, those 3 kids, Lord, and they're still kids, shaped this game of footy.
Talk about how one draft shaped Hawthorn's future, with Roughhead, Franklin, Jordan Lewis, those sort of players. Well, I think that's going to happen for Port Adelaide. They may not win 3 premierships or 4 premierships, but I wanted to show that vision. They were not overawed whatsoever. Smiles on their faces, loved the contest. This from Dersma. His coach will love him and pick him forever with the courage that he showed in this contest. It was inspirational. Look at the scoreboard, 14 points up. And then this one from Zach Butters is something that you absolutely love. He just went whack, kamikaze, whacks 3 players down, gets the ball out, and obviously Laddams kicks the goal, Damo. So those guys are built for finals footy and will be for the next 10 years.
Yeah, they've got the footy ability, the footy smarts, they're tough, and they do it with an energy and a passion, and I love it, and a smile too. The smile shouldn't be undersold in all of this, Lordo.
It shouldn't be, and the smile on the face of Ken Hinkley to persevere with Stephen Motlop is another one. And I thought Motlop's game sort of shouldn't be underestimated. It was such a low-scoring game, and for Motlop, the player that Geelong discarded, to have the last laugh and kick 3 goals. I thought going into the finals, he wasn't in the best of form. He was just being opportunistic, but it was his pace, and that's the worry for Geelong. I think their pace in defence, they're very good when the ball's in the air, a lot like Richmond, but I thought the pace of Motlop was too much for the likes of Kolodjasny and those types in defence. So I'm just really pleased for Stevie Motlop, and I look at that. Cat's not up to scratch to get... I think they won with 9 goals, Port Adelaide, and 6 goals came from Motlop, Rosie and Brad Ebert, who kicked 2 goals. And look at that. They didn't even score behind Myers, Rowan and Gary Ablett. And pressure's on Ablett, but you've got to stick with him. You can't leave him out. Gary Rowan averages 5.5 disposals across his last finals, and yet he had 5 disposals again on the weekend. So, yeah, the pressure is on the Cats big time, Damo, and Chris Scott, because even though he said it was lazy journalism, I don't think it was. Their finals record is what it is, and it's not good enough.
It's not lazy journalism to highlight a fact, and the fact is that they've only won 4 of the 16 finals they've played since winning the 2011 Premiership. That's not lazy. That's just bringing that part of this issue into the conversation around why they keep losing finals. And, Lord, when you present to our viewers there that graphic of those players unable to kick a goal in a key match, what do they do, though, going into this game against Collingwood on the weekend?
I don't think they just back them in. I think it can be a pretty tough place to play over there in Adelaide. It's a little bit of an excuse for them in a sense, but I suppose I don't think there's anything to come through. Jack Stephen was probably next in, and he got a tight hamstring playing in a scratch match. Quinton Narkle played some good footy, so maybe he's one that could be looked at, and Fogarty possibly to bring in some youth as well.
Now, don't forget, on Tuesday night, it's NAB AFL Women's Draft. Join Nat Edwards, Sarah Black and Melissa Hickey as they announce the next batch of AFLW players. The live event with every pick and comprehensive analysis is available from 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time on Tuesday. That's right here at afl.com.au and also the AFLW Facebook page. That's going to be a massive night for AFLW, Lordo.
It is, Damo. It's one of my favourite nights of the year, just to see the joy on the faces of young girls and young boys being drafted and realising their dreams to play football at the highest level. So it'll be brilliant. Also, the trade period will be here before we know it, and we're not hearing a lot. Where's Danaher going to go? Where's Fantasia going to go? What's Saad doing? All these types of players. Is it because teams are still involved in the finals and they don't want the distraction, Damo?
Yeah, largely that. I mean, when you refer to Danaher, Lordo, the Brisbane Lions have got the front billing with him in terms of how this plays out. It may still go down a different path, but they will have first say on him. He's intrigued by their offer. He's intrigued by this part of the world to live here, and most importantly for him, he loves what they're offering from a medical side of a situation for him with his broken and banged up body. Ben Brown also, I think, is in that equation too, Lordo. The Saints have certainly asked the question about him. They're still alive. They're one of only 6 teams remaining. So Adam Saad too, there's interest there, probably more so from teams outside the 8 with him, but with the salary cap yet to be determined, I think there's still just a holding pattern on that particular part of the AFL calendar, Lordo. But we've already discussed some buoyancy displayed in the Port Adelaide players. The emotion shown by the coaches on the weekend too was next level. I love this. I love what Ken Hinkley did here and others.
I loved it too, because I think the coaches that are still in it have their players, and I think they have them emotionally, and that's the key. Forget about X's and O's and structures and tactics. You've got to have your players' hearts, and in this, Brett Ratton has won his players' overs very early. Ken Hinkley, he's ridden the highs and the lows, but you see the passion that he has. Chris Fagan, Nathan Buckley, he's had to change Nathan Buckley. It's been one of the great changes in him in terms of, he was probably so black and white that he lost a lot of players. A lot of players wanted to leave and not wanted to play for Nathan. But look at this, the lighter side of it, the passion. It was brilliant. And the response from his players, they got a bit of humour out of it. So it's a tough gig, AFL coaching. And those guys, good to see them enjoy the fruits of it on the weekend.
No, I reckon there should be more of it because you can see the benefits that spin off that type of outlook on the game of footy. Lotto, thanks as always for your time today on Access All Areas, and thanks for watching. We'll be back next week after the semi-finals.